how do consumers behave and how should brands react? This is what we're going to talk about this afternoon. My name is Ken Lerona of Entrego, and welcome to the 5th Philippine Association of National Advertisers General Membership Meeting. This afternoon, we'll be talking about pivoting your brand story after disruption. But before we start, ladies and gentlemen, may I call in the PANA president, Mr. Marvin Tulim, to give us his welcome message. Marvin, how are you today?
Hello, Ken. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us on our 5th General Membership Meeting at PANA. Brand building today is really more relevant than ever. I know a lot of us are being challenged. A lot of people are getting their advertising budgets cut. But then again, we are here to help you, guide you in the right direction. We have to cut through all the clutter. We have to stay relevant to our consumers and be there for them in these tough times. At PANA, we are working very hard to bring everyone here, our membership, more relevant content. We have pivoted a lot of our programs that we are very excited for you guys to see. Some of those might be the ASC Help Desk, membership inclusivity of other media members, digitalization of the Panata Awards. So as we return to normalcy, a lot of our programs at PANA are really revving up and we are really pivoting to the new normal. And our secretariat, led by Bobby, is available to all our members Monday to Friday, regular work hours as well. And I would like to say thank you to our speaker today, Marian, for telling us about how to pivot our brand story after disruption. I hope everyone enjoys the session, and I hope everyone learns a lot from it, such as I. Thank you, Ken.
Miss Blaine? All right. While we're waiting for Miss Blaine's connection to come in, maybe we'd like to ask our viewers to please share with us in the comment section. Tell us where you are right now, where you're watching from, and we'll do a shout out for you. And of course, we have a very exciting panel this afternoon, headed, of course, by our main resource speaker, Miss Marian Villanueva, who's the head of creative domain of Kantar, and she will be joined by Shannon Arcelia, service pillar and business development lead, Maggie and Nestle Daily Culinary, Nestle Philippines, and of course, from McCann World Group, the director for strategy, Earl Javier. If Miss Blaine's line is already okay, maybe bring her in, Miss Blaine. All right, I guess we have some technical difficulty on the line of Miss Blaine. Let's go and proceed with our speaker. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our keynote speaker this afternoon. She's been with Kantar for 10 years. She has a wealth of creative development research and experience from over 400 plus creative development work. She has also helped creative advertising that sells across categories spanning F&B, telco, personal care, pharmaceutical, and of course, QSR categories. She spent the early years of her career in communication and media planning and buying, helping clients to reach consumers when it matters. She has a marketing strategy certificate from Cornell University and a bachelor's degree from the University of the Philippines, cum laude. Currently, she is the head of the creative domain of Kantar. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, Miss Marian Villanueva. Marian, how are you today?
Hi, thank you very much, Ken, for those kind words. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you very much again, PANA, for the invitation. So, good afternoon, everyone. Um, like me, probably a lot of you are raring to move out of this period of crisis and to move forward with our lives, our businesses, our brands. But what's really waiting for us out there on the other side of this COVID fence? I'm not here to talk about a formula nor preach about the do's and don'ts. Rather, I'm here to talk about human insights, Filipino insights, and how it's evolving to inspire you and help you re-strategize, particularly in terms of your brand communication and advertising in this extraordinary time. Before we can talk about where we're headed, we need to first understand our journey so far. At Kantar, we've been closely monitoring prevalent emotions amongst Filipinos during the key stages of this crisis. On your screen is social listening based on posts of Filipinos on social platforms. From the first news about COVID back in December 2019, up to when the ECQ was announced, we've seen Filipino emotions shift from fear to worry, panic, then courage, which then transformed, unfortunately, into hate post the ECQ announcement. The good news is that recently we're seeing that majority of Filipinos have been dealing with this crisis with love and most recently, gratitude. And so now the question is, how have these shifts and emotions impacted how the Filipinos behave and respond toward brands and advertising? The big question that looms large in the minds of marketers right now is, how can I recover? It's certainly a broad question, but I hope to contribute in tackling this from a brand and advertising point of view. What are some of the shifts and emerging consumer needs that we have observed? Which advertising content matters most during this time? Which advertising content are considered inappropriate during this time? For the most part of my presentation, I'll be sharing with you results of an omnibus study we've done in Kantar across key markets in North Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific amongst 1,950 respondents. For this talk, I will focus on Philippines' result, inserting interesting learnings from other markets as relevant. So which ad content matters most at this time? What are the shifts and emerging needs do we see? The first encouraging news I'd like to share is that based on our Kantar COVID barometer across 30 markets globally, only 8% of consumers of our respondents feel that companies should stop advertising. A lot of them feel that they're already bombarded with a lot of sad, negative stuff about COVID across the whole world. And so a lot of them say that advertising actually provides a sense of normalcy, even a form of distraction, and to a certain extent, even an escape. And also a lot of them are saying that because the economy and life has to go on, they believe that brands need to continue to advertise. Amongst Filipinos, despite this unprecedented pandemic, we've seen that 3/4 of the respondents we've talked to claim that COVID-19 actually had little to no impact on their thoughts of an ad. This came from a direct question in our omnibus study in Kantar. Does the COVID-19 epidemic impact your thought of this ad? And mind you, these ads that we have retested were pre-COVID ads, meaning when they were done, COVID was still inexistent in the minds of most. But still, despite that, when we retested them again at the time of COVID, 75% of them claim that there's little to no impact of the situation, indicating a relatively stable viewers' opinions on advertising. These are just some of the images that we have seen posted on social media of our fellow Filipinos around this time. Some of these my own, some from my family's posts. From these images that are being posted by ordinary Filipinos like us, some things are very clear. People are isolated and they're looking for ways to cope and continue to stay connected with the world through social media. We see people's imagination enabled by technology bringing the impossible possible. We also see collective kindness and people reevaluating what truly matters to them. We're seeing some departure from that me and myself mindset to a larger community mindset. At the same time, people are slowing down. Remember the Dalgona craze? And indulging and giving in to small indulgences. These changes that we are seeing do not merely indicate a metamorphosis. We are in a period of human evolution, with the pandemic and economic crisis working in tandem on us. The mindset and behavioral shifts we have made and will continue to make as a result of this period is likely to stay with us for a long, long time. The emerging consumer will have a stronger sense of identity. As a result of this lockdown, this quarantine, this isolation, and time away from most stuff, from the malls and all of our day-to-day activities disrupted, we see slowing down across various facets of our lives, which leads to time to reflect and to prioritize. So as a brand, you need to connect and talk to this new sense of identity. In the Philippines, we are already seeing early signals of this stronger identity, particularly amongst parents and how they expect brands more than ever to serve their role as one of their allies in supporting a better future for their kids. We coined the term hashtag Generation COVID. This generation has had both the pains and privilege of seeing raw human vulnerability and how this shapes them as they create a future for themselves and how they will transform their future, how they will create this future for themselves is surely an exciting and it deserves a whole separate study for it. Another early signal that we're seeing is that Filipinos are preferring communication centered around hope and resilience. Filipinos want advertising that offer them optimism and hope and at the same time resilience, particularly at this time of crisis. If I may read some of the verbatims from this study that we have collected, Filipinos are looking for subtle words or phrases of hope and faith that things will be okay, that every day is a chance to be better. They want to hear that despite the hardships, life must go on. And they want brands to help them achieve their dreams and continue their work despite this challenging times. In contrast, I'd like to share with you how differently other markets are evolving. If Filipinos are all about optimism and resilience, we see, for example, New Zealanders and Australians moving towards into humor more and more throughout this crisis. Coming from my earlier point that people are already bombarded with a lot of negative stuff. So that's why Filipinos are looking for optimism and hope and resilience messages. Australians and New Zealanders are, on the other hand, are looking for humor. They want fun stuff. They are already bombarded with too much sad and scary stuff at the moment. So they want ads that contain some humor because life, despite this crisis, they believe is meant to be lived. And they want humor in these dark times. In contrast, the Japanese people are looking for calm in their advertising. Calmness and everyday normalcy to them is very important. So you see how humans are evolving and coping through this situation. Another shift we see is in terms of well-being. In a post-COVID COVID-19 world, the emerging consumers will be looking for balanced, natural options and in-home solutions. So as a brand, you need to support and help consumers create their new wellness territories. We see the home as a heightened wellness space, no? Particularly in the Philippines. Filipinos are now more and more looking for brands that will allow them to stay healthy overall while in the comforts of their homes. Filipinos are also mindful about ingredients nowadays, okay? If I may read some of the verbatims, ads should contain more information. So they're looking for information, the detailed nutrients that a product contains. One of this verbatim even talks about the packaging already containing the nutritional values of a certain product, but still they want to hear it. They want to hear it through advertising. What a brand can offer, especially at this time. Less pronounced in the Philippine market yet, but in other markets, we see a demand for specific, unique ingredients that will actually allow them to boost their health, like this natto trend in Japan, or fermented soybeans. No, ever since the COVID-19 outbreak, a lot of the Japanese people have started stocking up and looking for probiotic and vitamin-based benefits to help boost their immunity and protection. Third, the emerging consumer will also have a redefined intimacy. What do various relationships mean in this world of a more conscious physical distancing? What new relationships or tribes have been formed? What we have today, right this very moment, is a new tribe enabled only by this crisis. We wouldn't have all gathered here today in this manner if not for COVID. So how can brands support and fuel new experiences for these new tribes? And lastly, we have interdependence. People realizing that we cannot really survive without the cooperation and kindness of others. What are the businesses that can form a linkage? Is that going to be a new way of catering to their needs or to consumers' needs? Who would have thought of a mainstream partnership between a hotel brands and cleaning brands? Yet we're seeing more and more of it nowadays. Early signals in the Philippines show Filipino consumers demanding brands to be a part of the community. That being a part of this community, brands can be relied on amidst this crisis. And being reliable can take many forms. No? In this case, reliability can be in the form of reassuring your consumers that you're still the same price as before, crisis or no crisis. Reliability in the form of availability, that you continue to provide stocks, especially nowadays, it's very difficult to get supplies. Reliability in terms of how brands are helping our frontliners who's supporting everyone. And reliability in terms of tiding them over, especially in this case of a lockdown. So we've talked about a few themes to describe the emerging consumer. If I were to recap, that would be number one, stronger sense of identity. The emerging consumer will be number two, focused on their well-being. Number three, redefined intimacy. And finally, the emerging consumer will have a greater sense of interdependence. So we've talked about how these emerging themes for the emerging consumer relate to advertising content that will matter most today and in the future. At the same time, these shifts also influence advertising content that will be deemed inappropriate, particularly at this time. In this Kantar study of pre-COVID ads that we have retested, we found out that majority of Filipinos saw nothing majorly inappropriate in those ads that we have retested. Again, to recap, this omnibus study that we have run in Kantar were pre-COVID ads created and tested at a time when COVID did not exist, and they did well. So we wanted to see how these ads will continue to perform even during this period. And it's interesting that majority, as you can see from the word cloud, majority of them are saying that they saw nothing inappropriate, majorly inappropriate across these ads. And one respondent even said that one of those ads surpasses time. The message remain relevant no matter the situation. And that's what we see in this word cloud here of actual verbatims. However, we also see some small words here. It means fewer mentions out of all the people that we talk to. But nonetheless, we will take a look at them and I will sharing those with you in a while because these are something that we need to keep an eye out for. So one of those themes or content that are deemed currently inappropriate by some Filipinos overall is that they claim that they find advertising that seem to encourage people to go against physical distancing advice as inappropriate. Mind you, the term that I'm using is physical distancing. It's not about social distancing, but rather physical distancing. Now, again, how can brands redefine intimacy in a world of physical distancing? Other themes, other early signals that are coming out would be number one, criticism. No? Coming from my earlier point about being bombarded by negativity and stuff, which is why people, Filipinos in particular, don't want brands to add on to the negativities going on around us. They feel that it would be inappropriate to criticize others at this time, and ads that are hating something are also considered inappropriate. Another theme would be around luxury. Okay? In contrast to the small indulgence trend that I have pointed out earlier, Filipinos express that extravagant ads are inappropriate at this time. Ads that display extravagance and luxury. Ads that are materialistic for materialistic items and products. So brands just need to find that balance. Where do we draw the line between a small and simple indulgence and luxury? And third, poor hygiene. I think needless to explain, there is a heightened consciousness for proper hygiene that must be closely depicted in brand communication. Now, going back to Australia, earlier I shared with you that they want humor in their lives at this time, but they are cautious also that brands should not cross the line and refer to the crisis in a light-hearted manner. No? They say that any ad which refers to COVID-19 in a light-hearted way is inappropriate. Anything that mocks the health issues that we are dealing with, things that address sickness, flu, etc., with a light-hearted approach. So again, brands need to find that balance. And in New Zealand, we also see early signals of heightened awareness for brands not to be seen as taking advantage of the situation. They think that brands should be genuine, not pushing any agendas, it's pushing products that you can trust, not just sell. So how seriously they are taking the situation and if they are trying to profit from the situation. Now, I've talked about the qualitative shifts and responses. Now, this time, I'd like to also share with you the impact to advertising receptivity quantitatively. Okay, our numbers show look at the data for the Philippines, our numbers show that based on the pre-COVID ads that we have retested, these pre-COVID ads, a short-term sales likelihood, meaning the ability of that ad to generate short-term sales, even if that ad was not meant to be aired during COVID, remain unchanged persuasive as they were before COVID. However, what's interesting is that in the Philippines so far, we're seeing that our contribution or the ad's impact to long-term brand equity has improved significantly, which likely reinforces the thinking that anything a brand does or doesn't do at a time of crisis like this will likely be remembered for a long, long time. Cut-through potential also remains stable. Branding remains stable, even enjoyment and active involvement. And across Asian markets, enjoyment is also stable, indicating that despite difficult times, people continue to appreciate good quality creatives, even at this time of crisis. And finally, persuasion. We're seeing that persuasion is stable overall. However, perhaps not surprisingly, we see nuances if we drill down by category, particularly for those categories that may be deemed to be more or less relevant at this time, including personal care and food service, no, in contrast to makeup. Finally, I'd like to leave you, before I end this presentation, with one of my personal favorite ads created during this crisis. No, credits to Clear and Unilever. May this be a reminder, not just to our consumers as we think about them, but a reminder for each one of us here at home to come out of this crisis much stronger and better than before. Let me play the ad.
No more commuting. No more nights out. No more distractions. No more putting it off. Now it's just you. Space. Removing masks for a time out. Use it to come back stronger. Pick up a skill. Hone your talent. Reevaluate everything you've taken for granted. You're not stuck at home. You're sitting on the home ground advantage. Create, iterate, and share the best of you. True to home and clear. Focus, focus, focus. Start. Don't just come back as you were. Come back stronger.
So that's it for me this afternoon. Thank you. But before I end, please allow me to invite everyone to join Kantar in our continuous discovery how consumer perceptions are evolving in this pandemic and beyond. So you may send me an email for details. I hope you were able to pick up a few ideas in my talk this afternoon. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much indeed, Marian Villanueva, Head Creative Domain of Kantar. Marian, thank you so much for your insights. It is definitely good news that we're not losing our jobs because of this crisis, yeah? So there's still hope, Marian. Okay, just before I introduce our panelists, I have a question to you, Marian. In the matrix that you presented earlier, you mentioned there the underlying needs matrix. In that matrix, what do you think is the most prevalent behavior among Filipinos?
I would say hands down, because I'm a parent myself. I think it's the self-reflection. I think a lot of parents who's in the call right now would agree with me that as parents, we are actually reminding ourselves that, particularly at this time, what truly matters to us. And life is short, so we need to spend our time to our passions and with our loved ones. And we have
So
to
this is
be
the version.
conscious about how we are spending our time.
That's right. So that's the new version of YOLO, no, of the millennials in the past few months, past few years. All right, indeed, very interesting discussion we have this afternoon. We will now have our panelists in. May we call in Earl Javier. Earl is the strategy director of McCann World Group. Earl, how are you today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me, Ken, and thank you for the invitation again.
Our pleasure, Earl. Earl, can you tell us more what you do in McCann World Group?
Okay, so in Macan, I'm the strategy director, which means I look after all things strategy. I also look after the strategy team across the different groups that we have in the agency. Also, I am the local champion for Truth Central. So Truth Central is our global thought leadership unit inside Macan. So from time to time, we also run research studies to figure out what's happening in the world to understand new macro forces that may be impacting consumer behavior. So I actually picked up a lot of things from Marian's talk. So thank you for that, Marian. Lots of really interesting learnings. So I am the local champion for that in the Philippines because that is present in multiple countries all over the world.
Interesting job you have there, Earl.
Yes.
But Earl, let me introduce our next panelist. Our next panelist is a service pillar and business development lead, Maggie and Nestle Daily Culinary, Nestle Philippines. May we call in Shannon Arcelia. Shannon, how are you today?
Hi, Ken. Good afternoon. I'm good. Ken, safe at home. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I hope everyone is safe also at home.
Great. Our pleasure, Shannon. Shannon, help us understand what you do in Nestle.
Okay, so as service pillar lead in Nestle, I support the Maggie and Nestle cream brands with their digital initiatives, mainly focused on recipe service and other service-based solutions for our consumers. And our team, our service pillar team, is also in charge of our digital transformation in our business unit.
Isa kayo sa mga pinakapatok na brands ngayon during the crisis, Shannon.
Well, thank you for that.
Are you seeing any uptick in your sales right now?
Yes, very good sales. You see it also in the shelves. Sometimes we're not there. But our team, supply chain team, brand team, and sales team, they're working very hard to ensure that we have enough stocks for our consumers.
Interesting. It's always part of my shopping basket. But before we proceed with the questions to our panelists and to our speaker, may we also invite everyone who's watching from anywhere in the world, anywhere in the Philippines, please send us a shout out, tell us where you're watching from. And if you have questions, please send them in via the comments section. All right, so maybe we can ask Earl first. Earl, what's your reaction to the insights presented earlier by Marian? What is the most striking consumer behavior to you that's happened since the quarantine started, since this conversation of COVID-19 started, Earl?
All right. So I was taking down notes as Marian was talking. So forgive me if I glance down from time to time kasi marami talagang mga gandang nuggets sa pinresent si Marian. So I have 4 headlines here very quickly. I think super interesting yung what she opened with the fact that it's a super emotional time na ang daming emotions sa pinagdaanan ng mga Pilipino as this crisis evolves because we are also all going through it at the same time. We're also changing how we feel depending on what's happening around us. And I think it was really interesting the point on how people see advertising in this time because they don't want any added negativity in their lives. And I think that just tells me na, people really notice what we do, what we say, and it's a powerful thing that we sometimes forget in our day-to-day jobs. Na how well we're actually able to impact how people feel and how people think about their lives. So that was super interesting for me. The second thing was how the evolution of people's behavior and mindsets. I think that really tells us, or that's what we've also been seeing in our own research and our own day-to-day work is mas nare-reveal sa mga tao ano yung mahalaga sa kanila. Like the things that are super important have become so much more heightened. diba? We have this old saying that health is wealth, and like now more than ever, like if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So people are trying to take care of their health much better. Third, for me, medyo connected doon is how all of these new territories that Marian talked about, the opportunities for different brands. You know, one thing we also found in our own research is how more and more nagiging interconnected yung concept ng wellness. Like wellness is also your physical health, your emotional health, like how connected you are to the people around you, and also financial health. Kasi parang if you can't take care, if you don't have the means to take care of these other things, you also feel like you're not well enough. So I think more and more as people go through this crisis, the way those three elements connect together will be interesting for brands to look at, because nagbubukas din siya ng bagong opportunities for us to be meaningful to people. And the last thing which I found really interesting was yung different reactions sa mga iba-ibang tao from different countries. Because what we know also is how people respond to things can be affected by how culturally wired we are. So, diba, Filipinos, we know we're super optimistic. We value resilience. That's why ganun yung reaction nila to the different efforts of the brands. While, you know, Australians, medyo cheeky, medyo humorous. That's why they're looking for a bit of a more light-hearted approach. And the Japanese people, you know, they value honor, and that's why they like the calmer ads that are coming out. So that's really interesting to see, and thank you for sharing that to us, man. It's something that's really going to help us with the work that we do there.
That's true. And I just want to zero in lang on the redefined intimacy beat. You discussed this, Marian. I guess I'd like to ask Earl before I go to Shannon. Earl, given you mentioned the emotional, how do you call this? People are very, very acutely emotional these days.
Yes.
And you talk about redefined intimacy. How are these things going to translate to the brand conversations and the brand stories?
That's an interesting question. I think, parang because the connections that we have with people, how that matters to us becoming super heightened. I think it's just going to make us feel more conscious of how well we take care of the people around us and the brands that actually help us do that, or how connected we are to our friends or our family. And if, you know, there are brands that help us do a better job of that, we'll be more, open to listening to them and actually, buying from their services and their products. Because Pinoys were also super social as people. That's something that's been true to us from time immemorial. So I think, if anything, the need for stronger connections is just going to get even more heightened as we all go through this pandemic together.
That's true. Plus that barrier created by physical distancing.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about wellness and caring story. Shannon, how do you translate all of these insights that we've gathered from Marian today into your own brands in Nestle?
Okay, so Ken, for us in the culinary business in Nestle, we really feel that there is no better time to create an impact to our consumers, the Filipinos' health, and their quality of life through good food than during this crisis. That's why as soon as the crisis started, we had to reach out to our consumers to help them with their struggles, their needs, and their pains while staying at home. So knowing what our brands stand for and leveraging on the available insights that we have about them, such as insights from Kantar, from what Marian presented, Google Trends, or even just scrolling through our Facebook feed and our Facebook communities that we belong in, we responded with agility and delivered relevant content for them. So our brand stories and our brand purpose remain, but the way we pivoted as brands is changing the mindset from selling our brands to providing relevant services during this time. So serving our consumers with what they need while making sure we play a role as their ally to deliver what they want, like success that they're looking for. So for instance, you can see here in the slide that is being flashed, for Maggie, we provided daily inspirations aligned to what consumers are looking for. So we provided recipes that are immune boosting or healthy, recipes that they can do with their canned goods, whether from pantry loading or ayuda from the government, restaurant style recipes for those who missed eating out. For those naman going crazy about meal planning, yung wala nang maisip, ano lulutuin nila, we also gave content on 30-day meal plans, complete from breakfast, lunch, merienda, and dinner. And then the team also came up with regular Facebook live cooking demos with our resident chef. And just recently, we launched our Ask a Chef program, which aims to give assistance naman to our home cooks. And then I think more importantly, we give back the recognition to our all-in wonderful moms who are really the ones who create this good food for their family, especially at this time. At this time, no, na medyo mas mahirap yung buhay. And we say that nasa kanila talaga yung sarap ng buhay, nasa kamay ng all-in wonderful moms natin. And then for Nestle Cream, on the other hand, this is all about creating delight. So the brand is all about creating delightful moments. And Marian earlier talked about the consumer's need for simple indulgences. And so we also provided recipes that will satisfy their cravings. Some we give support to growing home bakers. So baking to help them with their sanity, to help them relax, or baking to sell, diba? And have a source of income, another source of income during this crisis. And then lastly, we also promoted family bonding through dessert preparation. So today, we continue to provide these services to them, and as Nestle brands, we'll continue to be there to give them relevant content and have good impact on their cooking and their meals, and be there kasambuhay habang buhay.
Be there kasambahay habang buhay. Is that correct?
Kasambuhay habang buhay.
Habang buhay. Very interesting
Yes.
and very, very warm how you translate that emotional tug into your brand comms and brand effort, Shannon. Let me go back to Marian. Marian, the insights that we gathered here in your presentation, let me clarify, are these the insights coming from the urban market, or this is spread across different parts of the Philippines?
This cuts across all parts of the Philippines. Although, all right, I must say that the methodology that we've done to collect this is via online methodology, given the restrictions in conducting surveys, at this time of social distancing. So online Filipinos are the people that we talk to.
So online Filipinos responded to your questions, and the insights that we are talking about right now are representative of their sentiments. All right. If you have questions, please send them in the comment section down here so that we can ask them from our panelists. Let me go back to Earl. Earl, in your experience during this community quarantine, which brands have successfully communicated to the Filipinos, to the market, to appease them that everything will be okay. We acknowledge that we have a challenge right now, but then as mentioned nga kanina ni Marian, people are looking for brands that can tell them that we are resilient, we have hope, and we can survive this together. In your experience, in your agency, what brands have succeeded in doing this?
I think instead of maybe mentioning very specific brands, I think maybe I'll talk about the efforts that really stood out from what we were observing, especially in the earlier parts of the pandemic. Because we did see a lot of communication that was talking about we're here for you, we care about you, we will get through this together. On one hand, we were saying, parang pare-pareho na yung mga sinasabi ng mga brands. But then on the other hand, we realized, I think at this time it's all right because that's something that people actually need to hear, like what Marian rightfully pointed out earlier. So I think it was like every brand trying to do their own part in helping the Filipinos cope. I think the other thing or the other bucket I would say of brands that really resonated are the brands that found ways to be super, super helpful and extra useful to people. So, for example, you would see brands like Angkas offering a different kind of service para nire-repurpose nila yung service na meron sila to be more helpful to people. Or even retailers that were suddenly giving updates more regularly through Viber groups, through text ads, just to let people know what's available in the community and what they can buy and what they can't. And even kunyari retailers that were going the extra mile to provide safer options for people to buy from their stores. Lalo na yung mga may pangailangan. Like, so I live in BGC and there's a supermarket here. It was a restaurant supermarket. And what they would do is every time you buy there, before you enter the store, may pila na may distance. And then before you get the cart, they will disinfect it right before you use it. So I thought that was a really helpful gesture kasi to me that's also a way of communicating how helpful and how much you want to help people get through this crisis. So to me, the brands that did those two things very well really resonated and did a really good job during this pandemic.
I'd like to zero in on that aspect. You talked about this supermarket in BGC, Earl, because some of us might think that communicating during the crisis is just about doing advertising and
Yes.
making grand campaigns online. But then sometimes we need also to translate it down to the ground, right?
Yes.
And that's very, very important to reassure the customers in their total experience that we care for them.
Agree.
That's correct. All right.
Agree.
All right.
Very
All
much
right.
so.
Ken.
We're neighbors pala eh. Yes, Marian,
Okay.
you have an insight on this.
Yeah, I'd like to, because that's a very interesting insight that Earl mentioned about brands sounding the same, brands sounding similar, given that, especially now after this talk, probably a lot of advertisers are now thinking about how do I communicate hope, optimism, and resilience. I just like to point out that while brands will communicate on around those themes, they need to maintain their tonality. What is their brand tonality, and maintain those. I'd like to give a specific example. For example, Nescafe, one of my favorite brands as well, talks about resilience and solidarity. Babangon tayo, right? But at the same time, a similar brand, for example, Dettol, which is a hygiene brand in Southeast Asia, also talks about solidarity, but they actually featured this via a TikTok dance challenge. So it's a very fun brand. So one very fun brand, one very down-to-earth brand, but still both talking about solidarity. So as a brand, you can still continue to differentiate, and there are ways to do it.
So creativity really is required here. No
Yes.
tayo magtunog parehas. All right. I guess I also would like to ask Shannon, on your side in Nestle, how do you make sure that your portfolio of brands are, of course, we know that you care about the customers, you care about the Filipinos, and even Marian mentioned nga si Nescafe has a very, very strong voice about being caring for the Filipinos. And now you cited some examples for Maggie and the cream brand. How do you make sure na while making getting that message across to different markets, how do you make sure na merong unique voice and tone ang kada brand?
For us, Ken, we always go back to what our brand stand for and what the brand's purpose is. So for Maggie, it's really about helping people cook the fresh food that they love every day. And Nestle Cream is about creating delightful moments in their homes. So from those two different brand purposes, we're able to also differentiate how we communicate with each of our consumers, what recipes we would give them, and also what services that would be more appropriate for each of our consumers. So that's really how we manage communications and services that we provide for our consumers given those two brands.
That's very interesting, Shannon. Can I go back to Marian? Marian, ang dami mong fans today. We have a lot of questions for you. Are there any indication as to whether the change in behavior and perception are temporary? Do you have indications whether Filipinos are satisfied with the value exchange, particularly with the cost of convenience? What do you think, Marian?
First of all, hello, Joyce. Joyce, do we have indications whether this is temporary? As I said earlier, we think that this is an evolution. This is generation defining for each one of us, especially for the younger generation. And so we think that the changes in mindset and behaviors that we will experience today will stick with us for a long, long time. Do we think Filipinos are satisfied with the value exchange? I think it's an evolution again, but I think the optimistic answer is that currently people or Filipinos are expressing much gratitude to whatever it is they're experiencing at this point. We don't know for sure how this will evolve in the coming weeks or in the coming months, but right now Filipinos are grateful so far.
Filipinos are grateful. We're known for that. I mean, we're known for being grateful. We're known for being resilient and all that. Pero I've read in some discussions na parang that resilience is being abused or parang it's being romanticized. What are your thoughts on this, Earl? And how should brands strategize to temper that kind of perception?
I think the way that brands can approach that is parang really understand that people are multifaceted. Like Filipinos aren't just optimistic. Filipinos aren't just resilient. Of course, those are things that are very true to us culturally. Pero meron ding side na mabubisit ka na lang if you don't get something. Meron ding side na you will be sad if something happens to your family member because family is important to us also. So I think really understanding them from the lens of anong mahalaga sa kanila with your category, not just boxing them in. People are optimistic, people are resilient. Really understanding what they're looking for from you, and adjusting how you approach them based on that. So for example, on convenience, with retail, reliability and convenience, yung super delight bringers in times of this because nawawala yun sa mga tao. So even if people are resilient and optimistic, if they can't get those basic needs from a retail brand, for example, of course they're gonna not like you. Of course they're gonna respond in a negative way. So ako, if I were to like recap again, just really understanding them as not just one side, but really understanding what they're looking for and what's important to them and what's being heightened, what need is being heightened for your category during this time of the pandemic.
I like that line, no? You said what's being heightened during
Yes.
this pandemic. You have to listen intently and feel what really is in the pulse of the market. Now, Shanine, how do you translate that in your category in Nestle? Shanine,
Sorry,
okay,
Ken.
let's go. Sorry, I think we lost Shanine. But my question is, how do you translate that? Listening intently to what the pulse is and listening intently to the what is heightened in terms of emotion, drive, and feelings of the market, and how do you translate that in your brands in Nestle so that people are not just how should I say it? Hindi tayo magkakatunog-tunog. Hindi tayo yung parang, okay, sige, ito lang yung nangyayari ngayon in the market. So, ganun din, nasa bandwagon yung messaging natin. How do you translate that in your brands in Nestle?
Okay, so for us, from the consumer insights that we get, while we work with agility and while we needed to react fast, we always try to take a step back and see how our brands can really address those insights. Again, going back to what we stand for, what our voice is about. So it's really about being able to understand both what you stand for as a brand and what the needs are of the consumers, and finding that sweet spot in between to be able to communicate to them in a more relevant, unique manner, especially during this time of crisis when, as Marian and Earl said, sometimes brands now talk the same way or sound the same way.
I love the Chanin. If you can share with us, what is the pinakalutang na emotional state ng mga moms ngayon during the time of crisis? Kasi I've seen my mom friends, parang they bake, they cook. I mean, I feel like that's their way of releasing the tension, making themselves calm. What is your observation in your market, Shani?
I think for us, in parang inside the moms, there really is that fear, the struggle of um, making ends meet, making things work in this situation for their family. But that internal feeling, they turn it into something positive for their family. Like, paano ko ba pakakainin ng mas masarap na pagkain yung pamilya ko? And then, we see them commenting that hindi nila alam, they're constrained by their budget, by their skills, by the crisis. But we see them finding ways, looking for ways to ensure that they're able to give good food for their family every single day. So, nakita talaga namin na resilient sila, and that ang tawag nga namin sa kanila is all-in wonderful moms, because everything that they're going through during this crisis, they're able to surpass.
All-in wonderful moms. Ang
Yes.
sarap pakinggan, Shani. Let's go to Marian. Marian, for those brands or for those products that are perceived non-essentials, how do they pivot their stories and still maintain their brand purpose?
I think the question there is, what role do you want your brand to play in your consumers' lives at this time? No, we've heard stories about distilleries converting their factories to manufacture alcohol. I mean, given that the distilleries were, there was an alcohol ban at that time. So how do you, what you have to continuously monitor what your consumer needs and what role can you play within that need?
Interesting. Kasi I mean, if noong nag-declare ng liquor ban, I mean, it affected so much the business of this industry. But then they pivoted quickly, and they were among the first few who offered help to our frontliners. Lastly, probably, Earl, what are your thoughts on that same question?
I think it really depends on I'll maybe echo a little bit of what Marian said, and then maybe something more practical. I think it's super important now more than ever. Super important that brand owners understand what makes their brands meaningful to people, what people are looking for from them. I think if there's one question you can ask yourself, kung non-essential ka and like how do you pivot, maybe one thing you can ask is, what do you want people to remember about you during this time? Do you want them to remember you as a brand that, helped them get by? Do you want them to remember you as a brand that gave them a taste of luxury in a time that they badly needed it? Iba-iba rin kasi siya depending on what category you're in, and just what your goals are for your business also. I think depending on what you want to achieve, there is a way to temper that message so that people still respond to it, of course, in a very responsible way. So I think there's no one answer to that. I think it just boils down to what do you want people to remember you doing? What do you want people to take away as you, or what memory do you want people to have of you during this time of the pandemic?
Great, tama yan. I mean, parang ano lang yan eh, parang relasyon lang yan, di ba, Earl? Alamin mo kung saan mo gustong lumugar. Di
Correct.
ba? Alright. Okay, I think we have one last question for everyone. But let's start with Marian. Marian, how are the vulnerable communities reacting to the pandemic, and how can brands help them? What are your thoughts?
Unfortunately, we are unable to reach the vulnerable communities. I mean, in terms of what we do, the surveys that we do, right? But I think this question is best answered by Shanine in terms of how the brands can help at this time.
Janine, do you have any insights here? How Nestle can assist these vulnerable communities in in surviving this pandemic, this crisis? Are there any efforts that you've done in Nestle that, of course, helped these communities survive, Janine?
Yes, so Nestle also is very active in providing support to the communities. So we've partnered also with Caritas Manila in providing products to these communities. So products like Nescafe, Milo, Maggie also are given away to these communities to help alleviate some of their struggles, especially when it comes to food.
Interesting, interesting. Shanine Arcelia, she's a service pillar and business development lead, Maggie and Nestle Dairy Culinary at Nestle Philippines. And we are also joined by Earl Javier, strategy director of McCann World Group, and our speaker, Marian Villanueva, the head of creative domain at Kantar. Maybe just before we close, we will ask our speaker and our panelists to give us their closing statements. But these closing statements should answer a Miss Universe question. All right. All right. Maybe I'll start with Marian. Marian, uh, what do you think should our brands represent if it were an animal? What would it be to survive this post-COVID crisis?
I'd say at the top of my head, maybe a chameleon. No, as they say,
Chameleon.
there's a quote, right, that it's not the most intelligent of the species that survives, but rather the most adaptable to the situation. So brands need to hang in there, keep learning, relearning, unlearning, and continue to monitor these evolving consumer evolutions in order to stay relevant, even within this time and beyond.
That's right. That's right. Shout out to Charles Darwin. Thank you very much, Marian Villanueva, head of creative domain at Kantar. Now we go to Shanine. Shanine, if your brands were animals, what would
Okay,
be?
same question.
Yeah, same
All right.
question. Would be representing them.
Thank you for that wonderful question, Ken.
Of course.
Okay, I think Marian had a very good answer, chameleon. An animal that adapts to the situation. Maybe just to add to that, maybe a cheetah, the fastest animal, because during times like this, we see that agility is very important. So the faster that you're able to address consumer needs, and um, the faster that you're able to provide services that are relevant for them, the better that you're able also to connect with them at a deeper and stronger level. But of course, not to forget the fact that you have to adapt to their changing needs. So maybe a chameleon slash.
Chameleon slash
Cheetah. I love it.
cheetah. Interesting. Very creative. Thank you very much, Shanine Arcelia. She is the service pillar and business development lead, Maggie and Nestle Daily Culinary at Nestle Philippines. Thank you very much. No, Earl. Sagutin mo to.
Okay,
Miss
same
Universe
question.
What's your answer? Same
Okay.
question.
Sige, maybe I will go with a dove. A dove
A
as a
dove.
symbol of hope. Because I think one thing we've learned really is People listen to what we say. People listen to the messages that we put out there. And I think it's really important that brands, give people a semblance of hope, in the sense that not just giving them empty promises, but giving them hope by, being helpful, being reliable, responding to their needs. I think people can get all the help that they need right now, especially those that are vulnerable to this pandemic. And I think, it's also a chance for brands to reevaluate what makes them meaningful and what, people really need in order for us to respond in a way that's, really resonant to what they're looking for from us. There, I hope that answers your wonderful question.
Thank you.
That is correct. That is correct. And I agree with that totally. Earl Javier, Strategy Director at McCann World Group. Maraming salamat to our speaker and to our panelists for your insights this afternoon. But before we go, may I call in Miss Blen, if she's available right now, if her line is okay, Miss Blen, to give us your remarks for this afternoon. Kumusta, Miss Blen? How are you?
I'm okay. Apologies earlier. My service provider decided to drop the internet at the right time.
Oh my God.
Maybe just a few words. First of all, sige, I will ask you now. If PANA were an animal, Ken, as a brand,
What's the question? Okay, I have an answer to that. I'd go for unicorn.
Oh, agree.
Alright. Okay, let's hear it from you, Ben.
All right, maybe just a few words lang before we go. Thank you very much to our speakers and our panelists. I've met some of them earlier and even in our previous work. Of course, thank you to you, always ready to be our moderator, and to Catapult, who's always there to support us for our infrastructure. I guess the best words today are sharing and learning. The words are relevant, resilient, creative, and then practical, right? So you can be relevant, resilient, and creative, but at the end, as brand builders, we also need to be practical. So thank you very much. And I'd also like to update everyone on the PANA Foundation activities. So we are proceeding this June with our online session. So for June, we have something on education and then gaming as a strategy. And then in July, ambassadors as new speakers for the new marketing age. And then our biggest news, we are proceeding with the PANA Foundation brand building students competition, much awaited by the schools. So we will adjust the platforms to be needed and the youth congress. So watch out for that. I'd like to thank everyone for watching in behalf of both PANA and PANA. We hope you learned something. Ken, thank you again, and good day. Let's all share our hearts and not just our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Miss Blen. Miss Blen, of course, is the chair of the PANA Foundation as well. And may we call in once again our PANA president to give us his thank you message to our speaker and panelists. Marvin?
Thank you, Ken. Thank you to our speakers. That was a great talk and very informative. It's really promising to know that we have movers and shakers that help us in PANA to guide us in our journey of how we can build our brands during this time. So thank you to Marian, of course, of Kantar, and Earl and Shanine. And we hope to see all of you in our next GMM, and watch out for our very exciting programs that we have pivoted for our PANA members. So thank you again.
Very much once again, our mega PANA president, Mr. Marvin Q. Lim. And before we go, we also would like to thank our PANA secretariat, headed by Sir Bobby. Sir Bobby, maraming salamat po for organizing this. And of course, we'd like to thank Eileen and Adele, all the secretariat, for working really hard to put together all the projects of PANA despite the quarantine. And this has been another very interesting conversation this afternoon at the 5th General Membership meeting of the Philippine Association of National Advertisers, pivoting your brand story after disruption. My name is Ken Lerona. Thank you very much and have a good day, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you.